Now that we have a pretty good understanding of the Rust programming language, let's build something useful with what we've learned. So we're going to build a calculator that will take input from the command line when you run the project and give us the output. So we're doing something like cargo run, and then we would do like 2 plus, or like 2 plus 2, and it would give us 4 basically. That's what we're going to build. So first, let's make a project. Type in cargo new, and then the name of whatever you want to name your project. I'll call it calculator. Okay, and then you can open up the project and open folder. Mine here. Just test this to make sure it works fine. Cargo run, and it does. We get hello world. So instead of putting all of our code into one file, we can split up the code into several different files. Let's just save this right now, and we'll name this calculator, as well as same as the file name, project name, and we'll name it calculator.rs to say that this is a Rust file. So in this file, different files are called modules. So this would be the main module, and then this would be the calculate module. So here we can make a struct that will hold all of our functions. So struct, we'll just name it calculator, and it's not going to have any values, it's not going to have any fields, properties. We just want it to hold a bunch of functions. So create our functions by creating an implementation for this calculator struct. And we'll make the new function so we can instantiate this struct, and it's going to return ourselves. Now we can create our functions for adding, subtracting, and everything. Call this add, and we'll make it return a float 32-bit, and we'll take an instance of ourselves so that we can turn this into a instance function, so we can call it the dot function. So just call it 1, and this will be a float 32, and 2 also float 32. And we'll take these as references, immutable references, because we're not doing anything to them. We're not gonna modify themselves particularly. We're gonna add them together and create a new value and then return that value, right? So 1 plus 2, and that will just return it since there's no semicolon here. It's the last expression. So we can copy this and just paste it 3 times and change the name basically. And we can just change what it actually does. So this will multiply, this one will divide, and this will subtract. And that's all we need to do here. So to import this module into the main area, we just have to type in mod and calculator. That's the name of our module. And now we have access to it. So we can make an instance variable for that calculator module with a calculator struct. So we can name it calculator. So when we do calculator like so, we're talking about the module itself. Then when we do the colons, now we can access the struct. But this struct is private. When you put structs in a different file, different modules, they're private by default. So we have to add the pub keyword to make it public. And now we should have access to a calculator. So now we can call the new method, but that's also private too. These methods are all private. So you have to add the pub keyword to make them public. Do that. And now they're all public and available. So now we can see the new function. There we go. Now we have an instance of this calculator. And from that, we can call the add, divide, multiply, or subtract. Now let's get the input from the console so that when somebody runs this project, those parameters that they passed in, we can get those parameters and do something with it. So we can get those by using the environment variable. Just have to use it by typing use std standard and environment. Now we have access to it, and can make a variable for it. So call this args, and it's going to be a vector of type string. Now we go through the environment arguments dot collect. So this will cast this the arguments that is returned is an iterator, and then it's going to cast that iterator into a collection and then store it inside of this variable as a vector of string. Let's test to make sure that we're actually getting the arguments from the command line. So print it to the screen. And we'll use the debug mode to print it. So use the colon question marks. And it does work. So right here, we didn't supply any arguments when we ran it. So it just prints the name project. So we type in something like 2 + 2, and we'll see that it printed everything out. The 0th index would be here, and then this would be index 1, index 2, and index 3. And we know that by doing like index 1 should print out 2, right? And it prints 2, so we know it works fine. When we pass arguments to the project that we run, that's going to be in strings. So we need to cast these into floats so we can do some math with it. So let's get it some variables to hold them. The args, and we'll do position 1, so that'd be our first value that we add. We're going to parse it into a float of 32 bits. Then we're going to unwrap it. And now we have the first one, so we can just copy and paste this to get the other ones. That's our second one, and then this will be our operator. So operator should be at position 2, and the second operand will be at position 3. And for this one, the operator, we're not casting it as a float 32, right? Instead of casting it as a float 32, we'll cast it into a ampersand stir. And the reason for that is because strings in Rust are by default ampersand stir. So like this is an ampersand stir. So we're just going to cast what we the string that we get into an ampersand stir. And now let's match against the operator that we get and see what type of operator that they're typing. So for our first case, we'll do the addition. I'll just make all of these and then write the code. So that's for addition, we'll do subtraction, division, and multiplication. And then we're just going to print the results that we get from our struct. So the calculator struct that we have. So we type in calculator dot add, and we're going to pass in it as a reference operand 1, and operand 2 as references. All we really need to do, copy and paste this to make it much faster than typing the same line. Now that we have all that, let's also capture default. underscore capture default for us, and we can just print something, say that they were typing the wrong thing. Okay, so now let's run it. Say cargo run, and then whatever we want to run, whatever math we want to do. So we'll say 5 plus 3, and we got 8. So there's our result. So let's test again, cargo run, and we'll do some floating points, and we'll do some multiplication. There's our result right here. And that's our project. Thank you for watching, and I hope you learned some Rust. It's not the easiest programming language, but once you get used to it, it's actually pretty fun.